After the family gathering, I opened my account. It was empty. My father scoffed. We deserved it more. Shaking, I grabbed my bag and said, then you won't like what happens next. As their laughter rang out, a deafening crash shook the walls. The door burst wide and my name is Mandy, and at 32, I thought I'd finally escaped the financial manipulation that had been the twisted blueprint of my childhood. I'd spent 14 years meticulously building a life of independence, a fortress against the chaos. But then, at a family reunion, I let my guard down, and they came for me. Growing up, money was a phantom, always there, always gone. My father, Robert, a man who never met a gambling opportunity he could resist, would vanish for days into the murky worlds of slot machines, card games, illegal dogfights in abandoned warehouses. He'd return either flush with cash, bearing extravagant gifts that felt like a momentary reprieve, or more commonly, defeated, desperate, eyes scanning the house for anything of value to pawn. My mother, Diana, enabled him at every turn. A bank teller, ironically, her paycheck was just another fuel for his addiction. Your father just needs one good win, she'd whisper, rummaging through my room for spare change. His luck is about to turn around. My earliest memory of their financial exploitation is still a raw wound. I was 6. My grandmother had given me birthday money, which I diligently saved in a pink ceramic piggy bank, shaped like a ballet dancer. Months of quarters from lemonade stands, dollars from helping neighbors. The weight of it in my hands felt like pure pride. Then one night, a crash. I found my father standing over the shattered remains of my dreams, coins clutched in his fist. Just borrowing this, princess, he mumbled, not even looking at me. Double your money by morning, promise. The money never returned. Neither did any subsequent piggy banks. My allowance, when I actually received it, became a family joke. Borrowing from the Mandy Bank, my father would announce, snatching the $5 meant to last me the week. By 16, I was a master of hiding money. By 17, I had a secret bank account, not under my name, but my Aunt Lisa's. And by 18, I was out the door with $342 to my name, clutching a silent promise to myself. I would never depend on anyone again. Those first years of independence were a brutal grind. I worked as a waitress from 5 a.m. until 2 p.m., then as a retail clerk until 10 at night, barely sleeping 4 hours before starting all over again. Community college classes crammed into the gaps between shifts. I shared a tiny studio apartment with 4 other girls, each of us staking out our own corner, sharing a single bathroom with the entire floor. But through sheer bloody-minded determination, I maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 70-hour weeks. My salvation came in a marketing internship during my junior year. My boss, Vivian, saw something in me I barely recognized myself. She became my mentor, recommending me for a paid position, writing a glowing recommendation that landed me an entry-level marketing job after graduation. For the next decade, I climbed. Junior copywriter to content strategist, campaign manager to department lead. Every promotion came with an ironclad financial discipline. While my colleagues bought new cars and jetted off to exotic vacations, I stayed in my modest one-bedroom apartment, drove the same reliable sedan, and poured every spare dollar into savings and investments. Last year, at 31, it all culminated in my promotion to senior marketing director at one of Seattle's largest firms. My salary doubled. For the first time, I could breathe easy about money. The $78,000 in my savings account wasn't just cash. It was my freedom. The down payment on a house I'd already picked out, the tangible foundation of the secure life I had built, inch by painful inch. By the way, if you're still with me on this wild ride, and my story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories and journeys of healing are coming your way. Throughout these years, my relationship with my parents remained strained, yet civil. They called when they needed money, which I initially provided with a naive, desperate hope of finally earning their approval. Just until payday, they'd promise. Just to cover the electric bill. The loans were never repaid, and the requests grew larger. 3 years ago, after losing $5,000 for emergency medical bills that I later discovered funded a gambling trip to Atlantic City, I finally set firm boundaries. No more money. No more bailouts. No more enabling. Their response was as predictable as the sunrise. I became the cold daughter, the selfish one who abandoned her family, the ungrateful child who forgot where she came from. Monthly calls devolved into quarterly text messages, then near silence. When the invitation to the family reunion arrived last month, I almost tossed it. 3 years of minimal contact had given me space to heal. My therapist, Dr. Winters, suggested that attending with strong boundaries might provide closure. You can engage without being vulnerable, she advised. Observe rather than participate. So, against my better judgment, I confirmed my attendance. One weekend. One chance to see if any real family connection remained possible. Maybe time and distance had changed our dynamic. Maybe they had grown as I had. Oh, how desperately I wanted to believe we could be a normal family. How completely that hope would betray me. I arrived at my parents' house on a Friday evening in June, immediately noticing renovations that seemed impossible on their claimed income. The shabby bungalow of my childhood now boasted fresh siding, a wraparound porch with wicker furniture, and landscaping that screamed professional maintenance. When I commented, my mother waved dismissively. Your father's been doing handyman work for neighbors. You know how clever he is. I did know. Clever enough to jury-rig solutions that inevitably failed within weeks. Nothing my father built ever lasted. These renovations spoke of skilled contractors and substantial investment. The interior told the same story. New hardwood floors, gleaming kitchen appliances, a 70-inch television dominating the living room wall. For people who regularly called me pleading for help with utility bills, they lived surprisingly well. Mandy, my Aunt Lisa embraced me at the door whispering, "Brace yourself, honey. Everyone is in rare form tonight." Aunt Lisa had been my lifeline, the one adult who saw through my parents' manipulation. Her presence offered a sliver of comfort. The house filled quickly with extended family. There she is. My father spotted me across the room. The big career woman. Come give your old man a hug. He seemed genuinely proud, bragging to everyone about my daughter, the marketing executive. His arm draped heavily across my shoulders as he paraded me around. Always knew she was smart. Gets that from my side, you know. My mother was equally attentive, bringing me drinks I didn't request, introducing me repeatedly as our successful daughter. She asked detailed questions about my job, my apartment, my friends. She had never shown such interest in my life before. They're laying it on thick, my younger brother Jacob muttered when we had a moment alone. Jacob had followed my example, moving out at 18, maintaining a careful distance. Mom asked if you were still with that investment broker, he warned. Seems really interested in your financial situation. Patrick and I broke up 6 months ago, I replied, confused. I told her. Jacob raised an eyebrow. She also mentioned you must be doing really well to afford that luxury condo downtown. I live in a standard apartment building in Capitol Hill. Nothing luxurious about it. A familiar unease crept up my spine. They were fishing, testing the waters. Despite these warning signs, part of me desperately wanted to believe this weekend could heal old wounds. When we gathered for dinner, and my father asked me to sit at his right hand, I felt a childish pleasure I couldn't suppress. When he listened intently to my explanation of our latest marketing campaign, I glimpsed the father I had always wanted. After dinner, cousins pulled out photo albums. We laughed over embarrassing childhood pictures. Remember when Mandy saved up for 6 months to buy that bicycle? My mother said, pointing to a photo of 12-year-old me proudly standing beside a blue Schwinn. She was so independent even then. What she didn't mention was how that bicycle disappeared 2 weeks later, supposedly stolen from our garage. I later found the receipt where my father had sold it to a pawn shop. Independent and smart with money, my father added. Not like her old dad. But hey, that reminds me. How is that investment portfolio of yours doing? Patrick had you in some good stocks, right? The question seemed casual, but his eyes held unusual focus. Still basking in the warm attention, I answered more openly than I should have. Actually, I switched advisors after Patrick and I split. My new investments have performed really well this year. My advisor shifted some assets into tech startups that nearly tripled. My father whistled. Smart girl, bet you've got a nice nest egg growing. She does, Aunt Lisa interrupted firmly. And she works incredibly hard for every penny of it. The conversation shifted, but throughout the evening, financial topics kept resurfacing. How much did marketing directors make these days? Was I planning any big purchases soon? Had I considered helping Jacob with his student loans? By midnight, exhausted from constant vigilance, I excused myself to the guest room. I placed my purse with my wallet and phone in the bedside drawer, a habit from years of protecting my belongings. Before sleep claimed me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in my parents' home for decades. A fragile hope that perhaps we could build something resembling a healthy family relationship. That hope would not survive the morning. I woke at 7:30 a.m. to my phone buzzing with transaction alerts. Half asleep, I opened my banking app, expecting a coffee shop purchase. Instead, I froze. The balance displayed $837.22. Yesterday, that account had contained $78,837.22. My first thought was a technical glitch. I closed the app, cleared the cache, reopened it. The balance remained unchanged. Heart pounding, I checked my transaction history. A series of transfers had drained the account, all processed between 2 and 4 in the morning, all authorized from an unknown device. Still in pajamas, I called the bank's fraud department, pacing the small guest room. When a representative finally answered, the conversation destroyed any hope of an easy resolution. Yes, Miss Carter, we do show several large transfers from your savings account last night. I did not authorize those transfers, I insisted. It must be fraud. According to our records, the transfers were authorized using your correct password and the authentication app on your registered device. The accessing IP address shows. She paused. The location appears to be your current location. My blood ran cold. Can you tell me exactly where the transfers went? Several different accounts. The largest was to a Robert Carter. Is that name familiar to you? My father. My own father had somehow accessed my accounts and drained my savings while I slept under his roof. I ended the call and frantically searched my purse. My wallet appeared untouched. But when I checked my secondary phone compartment where I kept a small notebook with account information, I noticed subtle differences in how items were arranged. Someone had gone through my bag. Memories from the previous evening flashed. My mother insisting on taking my jacket to hang it properly. My purse left briefly in the living room when Lisa called me to see something in the garden. The unusually deep sleep I had fallen into after the single glass of wine my mother had pressed upon me. They had planned this. The entire reunion, the unusual warmth, the pointed questions about my finances, all leading to this betrayal. The physical symptoms hit me then. My hands trembled so badly I dropped my phone. Nausea drove me to the bathroom, where I retched painfully. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool morning air. $78,000. My house down payment. My emergency fund. My security. A text message from my cousin Ellie appeared. Thanks for the amazing gift. How did you know I wanted this exact laptop for college? Uncle Rob said you insisted on helping with my education. Then another from Uncle Thomas. Generous of you to contribute to the family vacation rental. Rob says you're covering half. And finally from my brother. Mandy, call me ASAP. Something is wrong. Mom and Dad are suddenly flush with cash, buying everyone gifts. I called Jacob immediately, struggling to keep my voice steady. I knew it, he said, his voice tight with anger. They've been planning this for months. Dad told me last week they were expecting a windfall soon. I thought maybe he'd actually gotten a decent job. Mandy, I'm so sorry. Did you know they would do this? I asked, needing to be certain. No, God, no. I would have warned you. But I knew something was off about this whole reunion. They've never cared about family gatherings before. As we spoke, I heard activity downstairs. Laughter, the clink of dishes. My parents and remaining family members having breakfast, as if they hadn't just committed theft against their own daughter. $78,000, Jacob. Everything I saved for my house down payment. Years of work. How could they do this? Because they don't see it as yours, he replied softly. In their minds, family money is communal, And they deserve it more because they're the parents. They will never understand what they did was wrong. I ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to gather my thoughts. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was theft, plain and simple. They had accessed my accounts without permission and transferred my money. The fact that they were my parents changed nothing about the legality of their actions. But family complications made everything messier. Would the police take this seriously? Would the bank reverse the transfers when the access had come from my own devices, with my passwords? What would this do to the extended family if I pursued charges against my own parents? $78,000. I couldn't simply write it off. That money represented years of sacrifice, of ramen dinners and declined social invitations, of 60-hour work weeks and delayed dreams. I heard my father's booming laugh from downstairs, followed by my mother's delighted response. They were celebrating while I sat shattered in the guest room. They were celebrating their theft as if it were a windfall they had earned. In that moment, something hardened inside me. The last lingering hope of reconciliation died. The last obligation of familial loyalty evaporated. They were not family. They were thieves who happened to share my DNA, and I would treat them accordingly. My first instinct was to storm downstairs and call the police immediately. But years of dealing with my parents had taught me that impulsive reactions gave them power. They thrived in chaos and emotional outbursts. If I wanted justice, I needed to be strategic. I texted my friend Sarah, who worked as a financial crimes attorney. Despite the early hour on a Saturday, she responded immediately. Do not confront them alone. Document everything. Call the bank again and formally report the fraud. I'll meet you at my office at noon. Next, I called Aunt Lisa, who had left for her hotel late the previous night. I wondered if something like this might happen, she said, her voice heavy with disappointment. Your mother has been dropping hints about a new car and home improvements for weeks. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't go downstairs alone. While waiting for Lisa, I methodically gathered evidence. I took screenshots of the unauthorized transfers. I photographed the location where my bag had been searched. I recorded a video walkthrough of the house, documenting the recent expensive purchases that contradicted my parents' claimed financial hardship. I also found something disturbing on my phone. A notification showed my banking authentication app had been accessed at 2:15 in the morning while I was asleep. They must have used my fingerprint to authenticate the transfers while I was unconscious. The violation made me physically ill. When Lisa arrived, I quietly slipped out the back door to meet her in her car. She hugged me tightly as I finally broke down. I know a good lawyer, she said when my tears subsided. Your cousin Michael handles financial crimes. This is theft, Mandy. Plain and simple. The fact that they are your parents makes it worse, not better. We drove directly to Sarah's office, where she and Michael were waiting. For the next 3 hours, we built a case. Sarah contacted the bank's fraud department with her credentials, establishing a formal investigation. Michael prepared documentation for a police report. Lisa provided written testimony about my parents' spending patterns and comments they had made about accessing my money. Here's what we need to understand, Michael explained gently. This will get ugly. Your parents will claim you gave them permission. They will say it was a gift or a loan. They will turn family members against you. Are you prepared for that? They already stole my money, I replied, my voice steady now. What else can they take from me? Your relationships with extended family, your peace of mind, your energy for months or years of legal proceedings, Sarah countered. This will not be quick or easy. Neither was earning that money, I said firmly. I want it back. All of it. We developed a multi-pronged approach. First, the bank would freeze any remaining funds in the transferred accounts. Second, we would file a police report for identity theft and fraud. Third, we would confront my parents with legal representation present, giving them one opportunity to return the money before escalating to criminal charges. Before leaving Sarah's office, I called Dr. Winters, my therapist, and scheduled an emergency session that afternoon. You need emotional support as much as legal support, she reminded me. This is a profound betrayal by the people who should have protected you most. I spent an hour with Dr. Winters, processing the complex emotions swirling through me, rage at the violation, grief for the family relationship I had foolishly hoped might still be possible, shame at having let my guard down despite years of evidence that my parents hadn't changed. You did nothing wrong by hoping for a healthy relationship with your parents, Dr. Winters assured me. That desire is natural and human. They are the ones who violated trust, not you. By evening, our legal strategy was in place. Sarah had prepared a formal demand letter. The bank had flagged the accounts where my money had been transferred. Michael had filed preliminary paperwork for a police report, pending my final decision on whether to press charges. I spent the night at Lisa's hotel, unable to face returning to my parents' house. Throughout the evening, I received increasingly concerned texts from Jacob, who had left the reunion early to drive back to Portland. They're buying everyone gifts with your money, he reported. It's disgusting. In the morning, Lisa, Sarah, Michael, and I met for breakfast to review our approach one final time. Michael had arranged for a sheriff's deputy to accompany us, waiting outside unless needed. Sarah had all legal documents organized in a portfolio. Lisa had contacted several key family members who had witnessed my parents' sudden spending, securing their support if testimony became necessary. As for me, I packed a small bag with the evidence we had gathered, including records of previous financial manipulations by my parents. I brought documented proof of the source of the stolen funds, my years of bank statements showing the disciplined saving that had built that account. I carried printouts of text messages where my parents had previously borrowed money with promises of repayment that never materialized. Most importantly, I brought my resolve. For 32 years, I had alternated between seeking their approval and protecting myself from their exploitation. Today would end that cycle permanently. Are you ready? Sarah asked as we pulled up in front of my parents' house. I took a deep breath. I have been ready for this my entire life. We arrived at my parents' house at exactly 10 a.m. The sheriff's deputy parked discreetly down the street, ready to approach when signaled. Michael stayed in the car with him while Sarah, Lisa, and I walked to the front door. My hand trembled slightly as I rang the doorbell of the home where I had grown up. No matter how prepared I thought I was, confronting the people who had raised me, then betrayed me, sent adrenaline coursing through my body. My father answered, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a practiced smile. Mandy, we wondered where you disappeared to yesterday. And Lisa, good to see you again. Who's your friend? This is Sarah, I said flatly. My attorney. His smile faltered for just a moment before returning, tighter than before. Attorney? What is this about? Diana, come see who's here. My mother appeared behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes darted nervously between us, lingering on Sarah's professional attire, and the portfolio tucked under her arm. May we come in? Lisa asked, her tone making it clear this was not really a question. My father stepped back, ushering us into the living room where just 2 days ago we had shared family photos and laughter. Now the atmosphere crackled with tension. Robert, Diana, I began formally. You know exactly why I am here. You accessed my financial accounts without permission and transferred $78,000 to yourselves and others. My father didn't even attempt to deny it. Instead, he scoffed, settling heavily into his new leather recliner. It's just money, Mandy. You have plenty more where that came from with your fancy job. That was my house down payment, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. Money I saved for 14 years. We needed it more, he said with a dismissive wave. The family needed it. You'd understand if you weren't so selfish. My mother stepped forward, eyes wide with practiced innocence. Honey, we were going to discuss it with you. We just knew you would say no if we asked first. You always say no these days because you never repay what you borrow, I countered. That is theft, not borrowing. We gave you life. My father snapped, his facade of joviality evaporating. Everything you have comes from us. That makes it family money. Sarah stepped forward, opening her portfolio. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I represent Mandy in this matter. What you have described is not how the law views parent-child relationships or financial obligations. You have committed identity theft, bank fraud, and grand larceny. My mother's eyes filled with tears. How could you bring a lawyer against your own parents after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. Stolen my childhood savings, taken the bicycle I bought with my own money, borrowed thousands you never repaid? Or are you referring to accessing my accounts while I slept in your home as a guest? You ungrateful little. My father began rising from his chair. I have documented everything, I interrupted, cutting him off. Every unauthorized transfer, every account where my money was sent, every purchase you have made since stealing it. The bank has already frozen the remaining funds. My father's face flushed red. You cannot prove anything. You stayed in our house. Maybe you gave us your passwords. Maybe you authorized those transfers yourself. And now you're having regrets. Actually, Sarah interjected. The transfers occurred between 2 and 4 in the morning while Mandy was asleep. The authentication was completed using her fingerprint while she was unconscious, possibly after being given something to ensure deep sleep. That elevates this to a more serious category of crime. My mother's tears dried instantly. You've always been dramatic, Mandy. Always exaggerating. No one will believe you over us. The evidence speaks for itself, Lisa said. And I will testify to your comments about accessing Mandy's accounts, Diana. So will others who heard you discussing it. You have a choice, I said, reaching for my bag where we had placed the legal documents. Return my money in full by tomorrow, or I press charges for theft and fraud. My father laughed, a harsh sound entirely lacking humor. Go ahead. See how that plays with the family when you drag your own parents to court. Who do you think they'll side with? The daughter who abandoned her family, or the parents who sacrificed everything for her? Then you won't mind what comes next, I said, my hand still on my bag. My parents exchanged glances, then both laughed dismissively. At that precise moment, a loud bang shook the house as the sheriff's deputy knocked firmly on the front door. My father's laughter died abruptly. The door flew open as Michael entered with the deputy, legal papers in hand. Robert and Diana Carter, the deputy asked, though it was clearly a formality. I have here an emergency order freezing your assets in connection with a fraud investigation. My father jumped to his feet. This is ridiculous. You cannot just barge into my home. Actually, sir, I can, the deputy replied. I have a warrant related to the financial crimes investigation. The deputy handed him the document. These accounts have been flagged for suspicious activity consistent with identity theft and unauthorized transfers. My mother began to cry again, this time with genuine fear in her eyes. Mandy, how could you do this to us? We are your parents. Parents do not steal from their children, I replied steadily. They protect them. The confrontation escalated quickly. My father's indignation turned to rage, then to panic as he realized the seriousness of the situation. My mother alternated between pleading and accusing, claiming I had always been selfish, always been cold, always misunderstood them. As the deputy explained the legal process that would follow, the front door opened again. My Aunt Ruth and Uncle Thomas entered, having arrived for the weekend barbecue my parents had planned to celebrate their windfall. What is going on here? Ruth asked, taking in the scene with confusion. Your brother stole $78,000 from Mandy's accounts, Lisa explained bluntly. Now he's facing the consequences. The look of shock on their faces confirmed they had not known the source of my parents' sudden generosity. Uncle Thomas turned to my father, disbelief etched across his features. Rob, tell me this is not true. Tell me you did not steal from your own daughter. My father's silence was answer enough. As more family members arrived for the planned celebration, the scene became increasingly chaotic. Some defended my parents out of reflexive family loyalty. Others, hearing the details, stepped back in horror. My cousin Ellie tearfully offered to return the laptop purchased with my stolen money. Jacob arrived, having driven through the night from Portland, and stood firmly by my side. Throughout it all, I maintained the calm certainty that had come with my decision. This was not about revenge. It was about justice. It was about finally breaking the cycle of exploitation that had defined our relationship for decades. By afternoon, my parents faced a stark reality. Their accounts were frozen, their recent purchases documented as evidence. Family members who had received gifts were returning them, horrified to learn they had been bought with stolen money. The facade of generous parents had crumbled, revealing the truth they had hidden for years. "This is not over," my father threatened as we prepared to leave. "Family does not do this to family." "You're right," I agreed, meeting his gaze directly. "Family does not do this to family. Remember that the next time you consider stealing from your daughter." We left them standing in their renovated living room, surrounded by the material goods they had valued more than their relationship with their own child. As painful as the confrontation had been, with each step away from that house, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I had refused to be their victim. The weeks following the confrontation unfolded in a blur of legal proceedings, emotional processing, and practical adjustments. The immediate financial impact was significant. While the bank had frozen my parents' accounts, recovering the money proved complicated. Some had already been spent, other portions transferred to relatives who had unknowingly accepted gifts purchased with stolen funds. Michael guided me through filing a formal police report, which resulted in my parents being charged with identity theft and financial fraud. The prosecuting attorney warned me the case could take months to resolve, especially if my parents fought the charges. "They will fight," I told him with certainty. "Admitting guilt would mean admitting they were wrong. They are incapable of that." Sure enough, my parents hired a defense attorney who specialized in family financial disputes. Their defense strategy emerged quickly. Claimed the money had been a gift, that I had given them my passwords voluntarily, that this was nothing more than a daughter having regrets about helping her struggling parents. The family fractured along predictable lines. Some relatives, particularly those who had benefited from my parents' temporary wealth, stood firmly with them. Others, who had witnessed their manipulative behavior over years, supported me. The family group chat exploded with accusations, my character being questioned by people who barely knew me. "How could you put your own parents through this?" my cousin Ryan demanded when he encountered me at the courthouse. "Over money? Is that all family means to you?" "This is not about money," I replied. "This is about trust, respect, and boundaries." They violated all three. Aunt Lisa became my rock during this period. She opened her home to me when I needed escape from the constant stress. She attended every legal proceeding, her silent presence a reminder that not all family relationships were toxic. Jacob struggled with his own complicated emotions. While he supported my decision to pursue legal action, the reality of potentially seeing our parents convicted weighed heavily on him. "I keep thinking about Dad teaching me to ride a bike," he confessed during a late-night phone call. "About Mom making soup when I was sick. Were those moments real, or just more manipulation?" "Both can be true," I told him. "They can have loved us and still treated us terribly. We can remember the good moments without excusing the bad ones." Professionally, the situation created unexpected challenges. I had to take emergency leave to deal with legal proceedings, explaining the situation to my boss in humiliating detail, to justify my absence during a crucial campaign launch. Vivian, my mentor-turned-supervisor, was unexpectedly supportive. "Family financial abuse is more common than people realize," she told me. "Take the time you need. Your job will be waiting." My financial security, so carefully built over 14 years, had been shattered overnight. While I had other investments and my steady income, the loss of my house down payment meant delaying that dream indefinitely. I moved money from my remaining accounts to a new bank, implementing enhanced security measures, including biometric verification that could not be accessed while I slept. The mental health toll proved perhaps the most significant aftermath. Despite weekly sessions with Dr. Winters, I struggled with trust issues that affected every relationship. I became hyper-vigilant about my finances, checking accounts multiple times daily. Sleep eluded me as I replayed the betrayal in endless loops. "What you are experiencing is trauma," Dr. Winters explained. "Being victimized by parents creates a unique kind of injury because it violates our most fundamental trust." Social media became a battlefield I had not anticipated. My mother, always skilled at presenting herself as the victim, posted heartbreaking updates about her ungrateful daughter, who had turned on her own parents in their time of need. Distant relatives and family friends who knew nothing of our history left comments of support for them and condemnation for me. I made the difficult decision to deactivate my accounts temporarily, cutting off yet another connection to the extended family I had hoped to rebuild relationships with. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I experienced my first serious wavering. The constant stress had affected my health. I had lost 12 pounds, developed insomnia, and suffered frequent migraine headaches. The legal bills mounted, despite Michael's reduced family rate. A part of me wondered if pursuing this case was worth the cost, not in money, but in well-being. I called Lisa in a moment of weakness. Maybe I should just let it go, I said. Write off the money as the cost of finally learning who they really are. You could do that, she acknowledged. No one would blame you for prioritizing your peace over justice. But Mandy, this cycle will never end unless you end it. Your parents have never faced consequences for their actions. That is why they keep repeating them. She was right, of course. Throughout my childhood and early adulthood, my parents had faced no real repercussions for their financial exploitation. Each time they took without permission, each time they borrowed without repaying, each time they violated boundaries without apology, they learned that behavior was acceptable. The next day, I reaffirmed my commitment to seeing the case through. Not out of vengeance, but out of a determination to finally break a pattern that had defined too much of my life. As summer turned to fall, small victories accumulated. The bank restored $34,000 that had been directly traced and recovered. My cousin Ellie returned the laptop, and several other relatives returned gifts or paid equivalent value. My parents' attempt to transfer ownership of their house to my Uncle Thomas, to protect it from potential judgments, was blocked by the court. Most significantly, I began building a new support system comprised of chosen family, rather than biological relatives. My friends rallied around me with weekend dinners, movie nights, and the simple gift of normalcy amid the chaos. My colleague Zoe invited me to her family Thanksgiving, where I experienced holiday warmth without underlying tension for the first time in memory. Through it all, I kept reminding myself that healing would not follow a linear path. Some days I felt strong and certain. Others, I questioned everything, wondering if I was overreacting or being unforgiving. Dr. Winters assured me these fluctuations were normal, part of processing betrayal by those who should have been most trustworthy. Family relationships are complicated because they are involuntary, she explained. We do not choose our parents, and society places enormous pressure on us to maintain those relationships, regardless of how harmful they may be. Giving yourself permission to prioritize your well-being over family obligation is a profound act of self-care. By December, 7 months after the theft, I had recovered nearly $50,000 through various legal mechanisms. My parents still faced criminal charges, with a trial date set for February. The family remained divided, though several relatives who had initially sided with my parents had quietly reached out after learning more details of their actions. The most unexpected development came from Jacob, who had processed his own childhood experiences through therapy and emerged with clarity I still sometimes lacked. They will never change, he told me over coffee during a rare in-person visit. But we can. We can build something better, something healthier. Not with them, but with each other and the people we choose to call family. For the first time since the theft, I felt genuine hope for the future. Not the naive hope that had led me to attend the family reunion, but something stronger and more resilient. Hope built on the foundation of self-respect and boundaries I had fought so hard to establish. 1 year after discovering the theft, I stood in the courtroom as the judge delivered the final ruling in our case. My parents had eventually accepted a plea agreement rather than risk trial, admitting to lesser charges of unauthorized access and financial exploitation in exchange for reduced penalties. The court ordered full restitution of the stolen funds, plus interest, totaling $84,620. My parents were sentenced to 3 years probation, mandatory financial counseling, and 200 hours of community service. The conviction would remain on their records permanently. As they left the courtroom, my mother attempted one final manipulation, approaching me with tears streaming down her face. We only wanted what was best for the family, she insisted. Someday you will understand what it means to sacrifice for people you love. I looked at this woman who had given me life, then spent decades taking pieces of it back. I already understand sacrifice, I replied quietly. I sacrificed the fantasy of having parents who put my well-being above their desires. That ends today. My father did not speak to me at all. His eyes, so like my own, held only resentment as he followed my mother out of the courtroom. That silent exit marked the end of our relationship more definitively than any legal judgment could. The decision to permanently cut contact with my parents did not come easily. Society expects endless forgiveness for family, regardless of harm inflicted. But they are your parents, became a refrain I heard repeatedly from well-meaning friends and distant relatives who did not understand the depth of the betrayal. Dr. Winters helped me navigate this complex terrain. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing, she explained. You can forgive someone without allowing them back into your life. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, to release the anger that binds you to them. Reconciliation requires genuine remorse and changed behavior from the other party. My parents showed neither remorse nor change. Their court-mandated apology letter blamed circumstances, minimized their actions, and subtly suggested I had overreacted. They had not earned reconciliation, and I had finally learned to trust my own judgment above social expectations. With the legal battle concluded, I focused on rebuilding. The recovered money went back into my house fund, now supplemented by a promotion to executive marketing director that came with a substantial salary increase. By spring, I had placed a down payment on a small craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood, my first true sanctuary. The process of healing proved more complex than the legal proceedings. Trust came slowly, even with people who had never betrayed me. I developed new financial habits, creating multiple layers of security around my accounts. Perhaps most importantly, I learned to distinguish between healthy generosity and exploitative expectations. Money is just a tool, my financial therapist explained during our sessions. The problem was never your money itself, but how your parents used it to control and manipulate. Healthy financial relationships involve mutual respect, clear boundaries, and explicit agreements. I practiced those principles as I helped Jacob establish his own financial independence. When he decided to open his own auto repair shop, I invested as a silent partner, with clearly documented terms. Our business relationship strengthened our sibling bond, rather than complicating it. Aunt Lisa remained a cornerstone of my chosen family, our Sunday brunches becoming a tradition I cherished. You remind me of myself at your age, she told me once, building a life on your own terms, despite what the family expected. I'm proud of you, Mandy. Her words healed something profound within me. The approval I had fruitlessly sought from my parents for decades meant nothing compared to the genuine pride from someone who truly saw me. My circle of chosen family expanded gradually. Zoe and her husband included me in holidays and celebrations. My colleague Trevor, who had provided unwavering support during the legal proceedings, eventually became more than a friend. Our relationship progressed slowly as I learned to trust again, his patience never wavering as I navigated my lingering trust issues. Perhaps the most surprising development came through my work with a support group for survivors of family financial abuse. Sharing my story helped others recognize patterns in their own families, while hearing their experiences validated my decision to prioritize my well-being over familial obligation. You gave me permission to protect myself, one group member told me. If you could stand up to your parents after 32 years, I could finally tell my brother to stop using my credit cards. 2 years after the theft, I celebrated my 34th birthday, surrounded by people who loved me without conditions, who supported me without exploitation, who respected my boundaries without resentment. Looking around at these faces, I realized I had created something my biological family could never provide. Relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. The deepest lesson I learned through this painful journey was that family is defined by behavior, not blood. My parents gave me genetic material and basic survival, but they never gave me the unconditional love and protection that defines true parenting. The people who earned the title of family were those who demonstrated love through respect, support, and celebration of my independence. I still occasionally encounter well-meaning people who insist I should reconcile with my parents. They won't be around forever, they caution. You'll regret not making peace. What these people fail to understand is that I have made peace. Not with my parents, but with myself. I have made peace with the reality that some relationships cannot be healed because one party refuses to acknowledge the harm they've caused. I have made peace with prioritizing my well-being over social expectations. I have made peace with creating my own definition of family. The money was recovered. The house was purchased. The legal case was closed. But the true resolution came in recognizing my own worth and refusing to accept less than the respect I deserved, even from the people who brought me into this world. Family is not who you come from. It is who you choose, who chooses you in return, and who proves that choice through actions, not mere biology. In building my chosen family, I found the security and belonging my parents could never provide. That is a lesson worth every painful step of this journey. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who didn't respect your financial independence? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in every relationship.